With that, let's go ahead and begin today's event, once again sponsored by Kofax and hosted by American Banker. It's my pleasure to turn today's call over to our moderator for today, who is, of course, Mike Sisk, contributing editor for American Banker. Mike, with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks very much, Aaron. And I would like to welcome the audience once again. We very much appreciate that you've chosen to share some of your busy day with us. We know that your time is valuable, and for the next 60 minutes or so, we will make every effort to make every minute count. Once again, our topic today is combating fraud with mobile onboarding, a win for you and your customers. And my name is Michael Sisk. I will be your moderator today. I've been a New York-based journalist for about 20 years, and I've had stints as editor-at-large at U.S. Banker and also investor editor at Red Herring. My articles have also appeared in Barron's, Crane's New York Business, Inc., Institutional Investor, Strategy and Business, and Worth. And it is my great pleasure to introduce our two speakers today. The first is Jim Marous. Jim is owner and publisher of the Digital Banking Report and co-publisher of The Financial Brand. Named as one of the most influential people in banking and a top 5 fintech influencer to follow, Jim is an internationally recognized financial industry strategist, co-publisher of The Financial Brand, and the owner and publisher of the Digital Banking Report. Jim advises on innovation, portfolio growth, customer experience, marketing strategies, channel shift, payments, and digital transformation within the financial services industry. And we're very, very pleased to have Jim with us today. And joining Jim is Russ Gould, Senior Director, Product Marketing. Russ has 20 years of experience in enterprise software product marketing and thought leadership across content, process, compliance, and document capture disciplines. He has consistently created go-to-market strategies and positioning solutions for competitive advantage. Currently, Russ is responsible for product marketing of the Kofax robotic process automation, analytics, and mobile solutions. Previous experience includes senior management positions at early-stage technology companies, large public corporations, and his own successful marketing consulting business. Russ holds an MBA from the Syracuse University Martin J. Whitman School of Management. And we are also very, very honored to have Russ with us today. And just before we jump into the real meat of the program, I wanted to just reiterate two things, actually, that Aaron mentioned at the top. First, we have time at the end for Q&A. We usually have about 10 or 15 minutes for that. You do not have to wait until the end to put your question into the queue. You can do that throughout the hour as the muse strikes you. So we encourage you to get your questions in there. We'll make every effort to get to everyone's questions in the time we have today. However, we sometimes run out of time when we have lots of great content and lots of good questions. So if you don't hear from us today, we will follow up afterward. So fear not, your voice will be heard, and ask anything you'd like. We would very much like to hear from you. And we also have one poll that Aaron mentioned as well, and I always encourage 100% participation. We do share the results with everyone here, and it's often a really great way for everyone to sort of see where others stand on the issue that we've come together today to discuss. So please participate if you can. And I will be back later to run the Q&A, but in the meantime, I would like to turn things over to the very capable hands of Jim Marous. Jim, please take it away.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. It's great to be on board again with another, I guess that's a little pun, on board again with another great webinar. So today we're going to be talking about the digital banking customer experience. We're going to be talking about the need for change. I think that, change is all around us, and I think the biggest challenge right now for most financial institutions is prioritizing how to respond to that change. I think we're in a very dynamic and transformation-laden environment where really there's so much going on. It's hard to determine where we need to place our resources. And I think in most of the surveys that we have done recently, we're finding that there's a desire to do everything and an inability to do everything at the same time. What we're looking at today is the onboarding process, the new account opening process, and how onboarding and digital account management really helps with the know your customer and the combating of fraud in the marketplace. In addition, we're going to be talking about the importance of making the onboarding and new account opening process fast and simple. The biggest challenge we have today in the financial services industry as we move to being more digital organizations is trying to push the simplicity and easy nature of the business to the consumer. A lot of what we've done up till now has been for our benefit. It has been to save money. It has been focused on the customer experience in a way, but the reality was, how can we reduce steps to save us money? Right now, it really has to be a focus on the customer. And then finally, we're going to be talking about practical considerations. What do financial institutions need to do to take the next step? All the research we're talking about really comes from the Digital Bank Report, which is managing the digital customer journey. That was published late last year. We also are taking research from other partners that we've worked with. But as we look at the face of digital, we are seeing that mobile is now emerging as the second most important channel for Gen Ys and for the digitally fluent. We all know we're moving to a more mobile and digital environment. What we're seeing, though, is that when we're moving to mobile, it's a different environment than what we had in the online experience. So what we want to do is mobile is supposed to really enhance the physical channel experiences. It's not supposed to be by itself, not supposed to obliterate one channel to make it another. It's actually supposed to add simplicity and convenience to the process. Forrester expects the smartphone penetration to reach 91% by 2020. That means if we want to communicate and engage with our consumer, we need to do it on digital channels. And Bain put it really well, where right now, physical channels have a bigger opportunity to disappoint, while digital channels can delight. That is not true in every case, but what we're seeing is in the J.D. Power study that was done last year is that for the first time ever, financial institutions, that the largest financial institutions had the highest level of customer satisfaction. That was not because they were the friendliest necessary. That was certainly not because they had the best needs. But what it was is they have embraced the digital channels as being the way to enhance the customer journey and the overall customer experience, while at the same time protecting the organization with regard to fraud and privacy. So as customers continue to digitize all aspects of their digital life, what we're seeing is they're really moving toward more of a mobile-first engagement. That the first thing we pick up every morning, the first thing we engage with every day, is our mobile phone. Now, that does not mean that's the only channel the customer wants to use, but it's certainly the channel that the customer uses for shopping for financial services. And how challenging is it when the customer shops for financial services either on their mobile phone or on their computer, and then is forced to go to a different channel to complete the process? The mobile phone allows the consumer to engage when, where, and the way they want to engage with an organization. They're being conditioned not by financial institutions, but by other organizations outside the financial services industry. They're going accustomed to Snapchat, Facebook, Twitter, and Amazon, Google, Apple. They're being accustomed to getting the kind of service and engagement and multi-channel experience that's provided by firms like Uber. They're moving toward a much more self-service environment where simplicity is king, and where the key to getting engagement is to provide a fast and frictionless experience. The expectations of the consumer have never been higher. They demand timely engagement on the channel of their choice. Enterprise systems, unfortunately, were not designed to accommodate this. Most back-office systems were built back in the 1970s and 80s when the ATM was king. A lot's changed since then. So unfortunately, the way we're structured as financial institutions, with silos, with individual channels working independently of each other, makes it challenging. I'll bring up a real quick case study. I had my debit card basically fraud on it about a month ago. And when I called my bank, they told me that I'd have to replace the debit card. Well, that's quite an inconvenience for anybody who's used to that, because what happens is any payment you have going against that debit card electronically has to be changed, and not everybody, myself included, keeps track of every debit that's taken against that account. So I asked my bank, I said, could you tell me where, I've been with you for 15 years, can you tell me where I am making automatic payments on a monthly basis, either on the same day or the same amount? I said, sorry, Mr. Brooks, we can't do that for you. We don't have that capability. Well, I know they have the capability. They just haven't embraced it. At the same time, though, right after she mentioned that, she said, oh, but by the way, your new debit card is already attached to your Apple Pay account. You can use it immediately. What an interesting dynamic where you realize now that the online or the digital side of the bank, the part that deals with Apple Pay, knows what is important to me as a consumer. And yet the other side of the organization is probably 3 or 4 silos. It's probably the checking account department, the debit card department, the payments department, possibly even the credit card department. And they haven't gotten their act together to be able to provide me the service I'm expecting. Where else do we go where we have to do the work of our financial institution or our organization we partner with on their behalf? So when we looked at it, we want to see how do you categorize the success of their onboarding program. We want to see, how well do onboarding programs currently work. And so what we found was that, a very small percentage are very successful. About 18% said successful, and moderately successful was another 31%. So it was a little bit greater than 50% thought they were successful, while another 36% said not as successful as desired. Now, I will tell you that in the research that we have done, there's no organization that we've reached yet that has stopped their digital onboarding program. So while it may not be meeting the expectations, the reality is they're not so bad that the people are actually stopping their onboarding process. So when we looked at it, we also asked, okay, so how can you open up accounts? As you can see, 98% can open them in the branch. That's pretty obvious. But website application with offline follow-up, 49%. So they have a website application. They have a website application with the need for digital ID and funding to be done back in the branch, 41%. And then of all the organizations we researched, and in our digital bank report in last July, we researched globally over 600 organizations, and we found that only 14% had an installed smartphone-specific app or a tablet-specific app. So we're really falling down when we're looking at the ability to move the customer from shopping to opening the account using digital channels.
So Jim,
we have a survey right now. Yeah, go ahead.
Yep. Yeah, I was just going to say we've got our polling question here. And the question for the audience is, with respect to mobile opening, can your entire process be done online? And as Aaron said early on, and Mike as well, don't be shy here. Although we're going to publish the results, your response isn't tracked, so nobody should be shy at this one. So yes, currently your process can be done completely online, or is this something that you plan to have available within a year, plan to be available within 3 years, or no plans at all at this time? We'll give you a few more seconds and show you what the results are of this. Give you a second, and remember to hit the submit button on the slide area there at the bottom right. And hopefully we had a lot of people on this webinar, so hopefully a lot of people are filling it out. All right, well, let's take a look. So it looks like, Jim, a little over 46% already have a process where their customers can entirely do everything, online. You add that with plan within a year, we're up to over 66%. So it seems like some pretty high numbers there. How does that?
That's really good. Yeah.
How does that compare with the results of your survey?
Well, what we've seen is that overall it is better than what we've seen overall. I think that, it's interesting to see that so many said that they can do the whole process online. It'll be interesting to see, because that's really been the challenge overall, is that with mobile account process, only 17%, as you can see on this slide, only 70% of the organizations that we surveyed said they could do the entire process without coming to the branch. What ends up happening too, and this is a really big challenge overall, is that banks are many times saying, well, we're not sure if this will be successful, and we don't know if there's really demand for this. And the challenge is, if a person starts with a mobile or online account opening and comes in the branch is actually incented to redo the whole process and make it a branch opening because they get credit for that. So what we are seeing is a challenge overall that in the industry where even when we have the account opening, we make them go into the branch. Many organizations can't track the fact that the person started in a mobile or an online app and then was forced to go inside. So what must be done in the branch in most cases? Well, a lot of times we're asking for signatures and supporting documentation, 71% of the time, and the 69% of the time, ID verification. Now, understand that both those are things that can be done in an automated way by Kofax. So what we have to do is we have to say, okay, if we want to become a digital organization, if we want to provide our customers with the best possible service and the easiest way for them to complete their process in the channel they want, we can't force, 2/3 of the people we're working with to come into a branch. So what can we do instead? And oh, by the way, how can we do it where we're also combating fraud, doing a good know your customer process? On the next slide, you'll see, does your organization have an onboarding program? So as part of this whole process, the digital account opening is part of the process, but so is digital onboarding. Because what you want to do is make sure that once you get engaged, can you stay engaged? Now, I've been pushing onboarding. Some of you on the phone probably have heard me speak more than once. But we have the digital onboarding, the overall onboarding program, and I've been pushing it for years. The good news is we've gone over 50%. Over 50% of the organizations now say thank you for a person opening the account. What's interesting, though, is that when we say 27% plan to have within 1 year, I will tell you that I've been doing these surveys now for 4 years straight, and that 27% still ends up being right about the same, and we end up nudging that currently have by just maybe 1 or 2 percentage points. So as I mentioned earlier in the webcast, the challenge of saying that we want to do something but not be able to do it, and there's a lot of reasons. But the reality is we aren't fulfilling on our desire to move forward. So if we look at this also, how successful is your onboarding program? Again, over 50% had pretty good success. And then you had a little less than 50% that said they wish it was better. So again, when you look at this, you say, okay, so how can we move forward and make our program better? It's a matter of channels, communication, and ongoing engagement. So when you look at channels, we're finding that what channels work best, obviously the in-person branch at the account opening is the most effective. Email is second most effective. And a lot of times email is part of an overall engagement process that not only includes email, but also can include video, can include direct mail, can include text alerts. The next is online and web ads and mobile banking ads. Now we find that many organizations are not using the mobile platform as a good marketing tool to move people forward. One of the most successful ones that people aren't using that we've seen extraordinarily good results on is SMS text alerts. We have an organization I worked with a number of years ago that had a great program. They made it so that at the beginning of the process, they asked the customer, can we ask you survey questions every once in a while? Can we check in with you by SMS alerts just to find out how we're doing? And the person said yes, and they said, I'll tell you what, we will give you an incentive. When we ask you something, we'll give you an incentive. And they asked the customer to tell them what incentive they'd like. It was between a cup of coffee at Starbucks, an ice cream cone at the neighbor's store, and I think there was a cash offer of about $5. The customer put down what they wanted. When the new account opening process was done and they collected the cell phone number, they then, as the customer is leaving the office, gave a text alert to the customer saying, thank you for opening an account with us. In appreciation for the time you spent with us and answering our questions, we'd like to offer you the following. And basically what it was exactly what they asked for. So it was either the coffee, the ice cream cone, or the $5. What that did is it built and reinforced the engagement that said, we will ask you questions, but we'll also listen to you. And oh, by the way, SMS alerts are not always going to be bad news about your accounts below balance, but the SMS text alert could be good news about something we're offering you. The key is to make all these channels work together. The key is to make it simple. The key is to make it an ongoing dialogue. J.D. Power found that between 7 and 9 contacts is what you need in the first 90-day period in order for the onboarding program to be the most effective from a onboarding perspective, from a sales perspective, and most importantly, from a satisfaction perspective. But what's going wrong? 2/3 of those who try to open an onboard online are unable to complete their application. That's lost business in many cases. Only 53% are successfully able to fund their account. 80% of the financial institutions do not offer a consistent digitalization of any given process. 61% still think a customer-centered business model is very important, but only 17% feel prepared.
Yeah, a couple of comments here, Jim.
Yeah.
In terms of your report, one of the things I found interesting, and with your research too, is you see numbers like this, particularly that first bullet about 2/3 have only made it through the process. It comes to metrics and customer satisfaction and how organizations are measuring. And the thing that struck me in looking at your research was that a lot of organizations aren't necessarily using the right metrics. And I guess maybe using this first bullet, they might have done satisfaction testing on only the third that went all the way through, right? Or maybe they did it on only the 2/3 or whatever. But maybe you could comment a little bit on that in terms of metrics and customer satisfaction.
Yeah, the challenge again is it's a person that really wanted to be in one channel, and we make them feel good about the fact that we take them out of that channel. So we have a lot of people that say that things are okay, or that financial institutions may not ask the right questions to say, by the way, were you able to do the entire process in the channel you desired? Well, we keep on asking, do you want the branch? And if you ask me if I want a branch, I'll say, yeah, I want a branch. Do I need it to be as close as it is today? I'm not too sure. And, would I have appreciated the ability to open up my account without ever going to a branch? I definitely would. In the small business area, we sometimes forget about that, but in the small business area, most financial institutions can't complete the process online and can hardly complete it in one branch visit. I have a bank that I've worked with for my small business account that actually said, you need to bring in this form. It's available online. Just bring it in, sign it in front of us, and give it to us. I said, can you provide that form to me? They said, I'm sorry, we don't have access to outside websites, so you'd have to go home to access it, print it out, and bring it in. That is a broken process. And I think the most important thing, Russ, that's important to understand too, is we sometimes have to work very hard internally to make these processes correct. When we look at the fraud and the privacy protection, when we look at onboarding, we look at digital account opening, we still have very few organizations that are able to open an account completely digitally. It can be completely on a mobile device. And the challenge is because it takes work internally to get all your different silos to work together to make this work. The solution is there. It's the desire to really get there and to improve customer satisfaction. And as I said at the beginning, most organizations have focused a lot of their efforts on things that save money. And if we ask the customer, how important is you from a satisfaction basis for your financial institution to save money, I doubt if very many would make it a very high priority. We have to start thinking in terms of what the customer wants. So I'm going to turn it over to you now, Russ, and you can take it from here.
Sure. Well, and as you say, Jim, I mean, to get there, I think is the word you used, right? This is really a journey for organizations, and they're only going to get better at it once they've started. So it's a journey that they better get on board because the statistics and even as we're going to talk about here, the impact of getting it wrong. We all know the power of a good first impression. But when things don't go according to plan, particularly today in our competitive business landscape or environment, it's possible that first poor impression could have an even larger impact on your organization. So it's really critical that organizations make sure that they have an efficient and digital onboarding process in place, as you've been talking about, Jim. Because getting it wrong is going to be costly, right? Whether it's delays and errors in the first steps of the process, or the ability to or failure to retain customers, or ultimately decreases in revenues, potentially even expensive compliance mistakes too. So, as you said, customer expectations are growing, and that means it's becoming more of a challenge to impress and satisfy these new customers. So let's talk a little bit more about the onboarding process and what the audience's organizations can do to improve the customer experience. Oops, I think we went ahead a couple here. Okay, so being digital is not just doing it on a mobile app or on the web. Behind the scenes, particularly from an onboarding perspective, the reality in most organizations that there is a lot more to the customer onboarding process, clearly than the mobile component. The onboarding process in a typical organization, as we've experienced, can look pretty messy here with all the different colored lines and interactions within the organization. So it tends to be challenging. And the other thing too, a lot of the internal systems of record were built a long time ago, so they tend to be a little bit inflexible, less agile, and therefore the processes become a little bit less agile as well. So as part of this overall onboarding and digital transformation that your organization will go through, the overall onboarding process needs to be internally as well, not just the mobile aspect, to ensure that you're providing a great customer experience. So whenever we talk onboarding, know your customer and identity or fraud really are terms that come up all the time. So KYC is definitely part of the conversation. And that process of verifying the identity of your clients is fundamental, and of course needs to be streamlined. If it's not, there's the potential for fines as well as losses of business, lots of negative impact. Of course, improving KYC efforts, we know, can provide all kinds of benefits, reducing time to onboard, improving customer and employee satisfaction. So not just your customers, but actually improving the work environment for your employees. But this is definitely an ongoing problem, with 2016 being a record high year in terms of fraud victims, a little bit more than 15 million victims last year, which is up 16% over 2005. So these are the realities that banks have to deal with today, and it's an important thing it's an ongoing battle that for the foreseeable future is going to be there. But there's some ways to help improve that and combat some of these things. So from a fraudulent ID perspective, there's two basic types. You've got image tampering fraud, and you've got kind of that traditional counterfeit fraud. Image tampering is when somebody's really tampering with the photo, doing some Photoshop work or whatever they might do. And this type of fraud really represents the largest percentage of fraudulent IDs used from an internet commerce perspective. Traditional counterfeit fraud is where the fraudsters are physically manipulating the ID, or even professionally manufacturing them. These things can be purchased on the black market or on the dark web. Mine should be coming shortly. Just kidding. No, but I've had a coworker, buy a number of fake IDs. We do a lot of testing, right? So we use the fake IDs to actually test the software, purely for testing purposes, of course. So today, this type of fraud is really represented a smaller percentage of the overall, but it's there and will continue to be there. And one of the points here today is that the more you can leverage software, and software algorithms to combat this fraud and facilitate a frictionless process, the better off your process is going to be for both you and your customers. So really that's where the win for you and the win for your customers comes in. You know, and obviously one of the key challenges around onboarding, new account opening is what is being presented to me, is it authentic, right? And how do we check to ensure the integrity of the ID and the individual who's presenting that ID? And there's document verification technology today that supports KYC regulations and reduces fraud by determining if the document is real and if it's unaltered for these digital onboarding cases. There's also this facial recognition technology, and you'll see in a quick little demo in a second, that helps make sure that the identity of the person is the one that's on that particular ID. Now, in terms of these capabilities, this is where the neural network technology comes in. So this is where you've got the PhD scientists that have built these algorithms to check and verify, that document itself hasn't been altered, as well as the picture provided of the individual. And there's all kinds of different checks that'll be done. And depending on, the ID, the software could be running, more than 27 different checks just to ensure the integrity of that particular ID. So, and as you'll see in a moment, the facial recognition technology can also further help reduce fraud by, matching kind of a selfie to the picture of that ID. So, what I'm about to show you is this is a particular piece or component of the onboarding process, right? So we're focusing in here on document verification, ID verification, and identity of that individual. So what I'm going to show you here is I'm going to use a driver's license, and I'm going to capture the front of that driver's license. I'm also going to flip it over and capture the barcode on the back. And then the third thing I'm going to do is capture a selfie. So I just actually did this one the other day. And so I'll run it through, and you'll see, how each one of the steps, I did this actually on my mobile phone, my iPhone. And watch closely during the selfie portion at the end. That's kind of the third step in this process. And you'll notice that I'll blink my eyes a couple times, and I'll talk more about this afterwards. So that's an interesting component to the technology itself. So we'll cue this thing up and take a look, and here we go. So I'm on my phone. This is a dummy application, right, that we've built, a variety of different things. I'm going to check an ID, as I said, capture the front of my ID. All right, a lot of it happens automatically. You see what's happening here. It's telling me what to do and does things automatically, even with the barcode as it grabs that, right? Not necessarily the best environment, but boom, it can grab that information nicely and easily and quickly. What you're seeing here now, this point where it's moving around, all the information that's captured is going to the verification server, and you'll see there, went a little fast, sorry about that, is what came back is that it said this was a valid ID, and the picture, that selfie was, it was a valid ID. Now we're going to do the selfies. Did this myself sitting at my desk, so nothing fancy. We weren't in some studio concocting this thing. And then what came back in terms of that selfie was that it passed. I was. And we do a lot of different testing, and it's interesting. This technology can even deal with things like glasses and whatnot. So it's kind of interesting. All right. Real quick, that was a fast and easy kind of approach. Customers guided through the process. There's all kinds of other things that can go on in the background to ensure that frictionless process for your customers. And let's talk a little bit about recapping kind of what we did there. So as I said, I initially took an image of the ID, took a picture of that ID with my iPhone. I also captured the barcode on the back. And in this case, I used that information to help identify or verify authenticity of the document and that I'm the person who I said I was. I could have, in other applications, used this information to pre-fill forms and things like that, as you see kind of in the middle of the screen here. step 2, but I focused really on the fraud aspects of things. So took that selfie, and then all those images are sent to the verification server in parallel, all that information that was gathered from the barcode as well as the ID itself and my selfie. And then with respect to the selfie, I mentioned Blink. Blink is part of a liveness test. And the purpose, there's additional tests that we do for liveness as well, not just this Blink thing. Blink is probably the most simplistic part of it. There's a lot of other sophisticated algorithms that go on here. But the idea here is that this is designed to stop people from just splicing in a picture, right, a real picture of themselves into the ID, or to even use a video in this kind of a process. So a pre-recorded video, this kind of stops some of these other ways of trying to attack this identity verification. So the recognition, engine is highly rated. From NIST, they do testing probably about once every 4 years or so. NIST is the National Institute of Standards and Technology. So some pretty cool, sophisticated stuff here. But if everything worked okay as it did in my little sample demo, of course, the applicant could move forward, and if not, you can, of course, set up the process in any way you want and have them come to the branch or whatever the case may be. In terms of the overall experience, our mobile platform is really optimized to help you optimize the experience with your customers, controlling the capture experience, then automatically using information from that capture to extract the relevant information and put data in pre-fill forms. So showed the little demo in terms of document verification and facial recognition, making sure that this ID isn't altered or making sure that it's real. And with the facial recognition stuff, ensure that the applicant is the owner of the ID. So, and automating this process makes it as frictionless as possible. The other thing that's important, too, is analytics. Not analytics from a linear regression perspective necessarily, but analytics in terms of what's the experience for the customers, what environments are they using in terms of devices and things like that, but also what's happening in terms of the onboarding process. Analytics are really key to ensuring that in helping you improve this journey you're on in terms of improving your customer experience, particularly when it comes to digital. So, you can set up a nice frictionless process to make that onboarding experience really quick and efficient. So, Jim, let's start to talk about some, practical considerations here for the audience today. I guess the first thing is, with your research and what you've done, what are some of the things you're seeing in terms of some practical considerations when people are embarking on this journey?
Excuse me. I think the biggest challenge, at least in the organizations that we've talked to in the surveys we've done, is really getting started. It is a matter of getting the team together and say, how can we take steps out of the new account and the onboarding process? How can we make it so it's simple? How can we make it so we communicate to the consumer using really good targeted messages that are based on advanced analytics? And, we did a trends prediction survey this year and did another report at the beginning of the year on the number one trends and predictions, and all 10 of them really focused on the foundation of good data and the ability to do analytics. And I think the key when you're looking at onboarding, when you're looking at fraud detection, when you're looking at the new account opening process, the key is really going to be how well are you going to know the customer, look out for the customer, and then reward the customer with good offers. And I think the biggest change is, in the past, the customer was satisfied with us giving them a rear-view mirror view of their finances and what's going on. They were satisfied with you telling them, oh, by the way, you overdrew your account, or you're hitting your balance limit that you put on your things you wanted texts about or warnings about. The reality is the customer now, it's like the difference between the cars in the early 2000s and the cars today. The cars in the early 2000s, it was all up to you to drive them. Cars today help drive for you. They warn you when you're out of your lane. They'll actually put the brakes on if you're about to hit something. I wish that was true when my son got in an accident recently, and he had a 2005 car. So the bottom line is, I said, you found out you had an accident after it happened. Wouldn't have been great if you had a new car that which he's not going to get now. But the key is, the customer wants the GPS view of their financial wherewithal. So when you're looking at onboarding, when you're looking at the new account opening process, the customer's really hoping that you'll help them help themselves, help them do banking better, help them save, help them pay bills in a simple, organized way that can be done digitally.
Yeah, we have a similar experience, Jim, in that. Obviously, given our capabilities, we do spend a lot of time with customers from a front-end perspective, right, with these mobile capabilities and how they're interacting with their customers. I guess the other thing that we get experience with, too, is, and as I talked about with the overall, and you've talked about it, too, in terms of the overall onboarding process behind the scenes. And that's a big part of this is trying to, as quickly as possible, make that process much more streamlined as well. Because without solving, part of that inflexibility with those old systems of record, they end up with trouble in the overall process. So it's definitely lots of different opportunities and areas to address the overall experience.
Right.
So in terms of, and we'll want to move forward here relatively quickly so we can get to some questions, but, in terms of best-in-class onboarding, there's many different aspects, as I just mentioned, to consider for you in terms of starting and going through your digital transformation, particularly around onboarding. There's lots of different options from a technology perspective, and different areas where you need to deal with, that process throughout your organization from beginning to end. Today we just kind of showed one aspect where we've focused on using a mobile device and, kind of checking to make sure and validate that the ID is valid. But, this is a much broader process to your organization and for your customers as well. So you've got to keep all those things in mind. And from a technology consideration perspective, when you're looking for solutions, you want to look for those that are built to optimize the customer experience, obviously. And we've showed you with some of the data today, as well as the little demo and some of the other aspects, how you can improve certain aspects of that customer experience. You want to make sure that what you're doing or leveraging from a software perspective works with your current infrastructure. Right? You need to leverage that investment as much as possible. We all know and experience it all the time, particularly around systems of record that are very old, and you would think that they'd be going away. That tends not to be the case. So with that in mind, you've got to be able to leverage what's there in a very effective, flexible, agile way. Another thing to consider as well, to make sure, kind of test and make sure that the solution really enables you to, a fast time to market with your solution. You want it to provide as much capability as possible so that you can get to market with your solution as soon as possible. And we talked a lot about the reasons why. And then also support multiple use cases, right? The demo I showed was really just a driver's license and ID. But, we all know about, bill pay and check deposit and credit card capabilities too. So it's not just with that ID, but all kinds of other capabilities that you can, leverage mobile to provide a frictionless experience for your customers. Anything you wanted to add here, Jim?
No, I think, when you look at this, I think what we have to do, we forget about it, but as bankers, we, legacy-wise, think that the customer wants more, so we keep on wanting to add things. I think what we have to remember is that the digital nature of everything that goes on right now, the customer really appreciates when we subtract items, when we get rid of steps and make it easier for them. And so it's really against a lot of our nature. So we have to really work and say, okay, how do we remove steps from the process?
Yep, and I think the bottom line in terms of the technology, right, is that it's really got to empower all of the above here. It's not just one particular aspect of this. But in terms of what you're saying, I think that kind of leads to some of the concluding thoughts in terms of where to get started. And obviously developing a plan is, the first place. But, the first thing I wanted to comment on, and it's surprising to me, not only specific to what we're talking about today in onboarding, but it happens in other areas too, is how important putting the customer first is. Now, everybody does that when they develop their plan, but can't stress enough that stays at the front and foremost in terms of the ongoing project. What happens a lot of times is they get to the back-end reality and people within organizations start making decisions because of limitations or whatever the issue is with maybe an internal system of record or whatever, and things start to go awry. So I guess, in terms of developing that plan, that's one of the first things I think, that I can't stress enough. I think you've also got some ideas here too, Jim, in terms of, where organizations should get started.
Yeah, I think when we're talking about the onboarding or the account opening process, I think there's nothing more important than getting that digital and online account opening process in place. Yes, it's important to onboard. It's important to say thank you to the customer. But the customer right now wants a digital journey, a lot more than we give them credit for, because we don't measure it really well right now. And it not only protects us from a fraud perspective, but it's easier. Nobody wants to go to the branch. They go there because we kind of make them to. We make them do that. And so when we look at the digital account opening process, we need to start there. We need to start small. I would also say start at least with a 1 or 2 step onboarding process.
Okay. So what I think we want to try to do now is, and we still got some time, so we definitely wanted to leave some time. As we discussed earlier, if we don't get to the question, because there's actually quite a few here, we will definitely respond to everybody so you get the answers to the questions. So with that, I think, Mike, you were going to kind of jump in here and kind of lead the way.
Absolutely. I'm ready. I'm ready to jump in. And we do have a lot of great questions here. So let me go ahead and kick things off with this question for you, Jim. How long should an onboarding process be? 30 days, 60 days, 90 days?
It's a great question. I think we've gotten so accustomed to calling it an onboarding program, we forget that really what it is, it's a customer communication process. It's a customer experience process. We call it onboarding because we used to ignore these people that just opened accounts. We never would talk to them about new accounts. We never talked to them about how to use the account. We never talked about how engaging it should be. So really, there's no set duration. I think most people, most organizations, will either have a 60 or 90-day window that they really focus on the engagement process, trying to get direct deposit, mobile bill pay, moving to the mobile channels, these types of things done. But there's no magic to it because nothing should stop. Once you get, quote-unquote, done with the onboarding period, you should still need to communicate with the customer based on advanced analytics and machine learning to be able to say, what do they need next? What is it in the future that they need? And when you look at the opportunity we have, it's not only target based on what accounts they have and what they're doing, but also can base it on social and behavioral metrics. It really gives us a lot of power to actually move to an ongoing communication process. So the onboarding process, most organizations will say 60 to 90 days, but the key is not to stop, to keep the communication going. And it's not a program. It's not like, oh, geez, it's fall, it's time to do equity credit. It's what do they need today? What do they need this moment? What do they need at 2:52 Eastern time? So it's that ability that we need to have. And when we get better at it, we'll stop calling it an onboarding program. We're going to call it an ongoing communications process built on needs, wants, and desires.
Excellent. Thank you. All right, let me ask this next question. A question about this ID integrity solution. Is it a third-party vendor solution or in-house built by Kofax?
This is something actually built in-house by Kofax. So we've got a lot of technology here that have been developed over the years. So yeah, this is a solution that we offer to the marketplace.
Oh, thank you. All right, next question. Here we go. Mobile web doesn't support the integration with the physical camera in the same way as native mobile app. However, does pushing people to download a native app via App Store introduce additional friction into the process?
Yeah, it's a good question. So a couple comments. Sure. I think if it, particularly in a new customer environment situation, right, where they're not an existing customer of the bank, requiring them to download a native app, right, from the App Store or whatever, definitely would introduce some friction. Yeah, mobile, and then the other part of the question here in terms of mobile web. Yes, in terms of the mobile web, there are some limitations relative to what you can do in a native mobile app. You'd be surprised at how close we're getting from a mobile web perspective, but there's definitely some limitations from a mobile web perspective. But you can get through a lot of this identity stuff using a mobile web solution as well, though. There are some minor limitations. So good question.
Excellent. Yes, it's an audience here with a lot of good questions I can see. All right, next one here is, let's take a look. All right. Why is there such a need for digital account opening, but so few organizations providing this capability end-to-end?
I'll start with that, and then certainly, Russ, you can add in, is that the need for it is the consumer starts their shopping process not by going from branch to branch anymore. They go from app to app or from Google query. And that's why everybody, is so important to the SEO process through Google and everything else is to make it so that they find you. And then we take them off the device. So when you look at importance, that's why it's so important, because the customers signing up and looking for their next financial institution, either on their computer or on their phone, we need to keep them on that channel rather than have the risk that they pass a branch, they go, well, maybe I'll get here first, and then they're relieved. Now, the reason why a lot of organizations don't do it, there's a lot of concern about know your customer. There's a lot of concern about the taking a picture of an ID rather than using traditional signature cards. I mean, there's still a lot of organizations that believe that they still have to have, actual wet signatures on signature cards. That's not required, but it's getting through all those hurdles. The organizations that have been able to implement a digital account opening and digital onboarding process have a committee together to say, we will get this solved. And not a matter of saying, okay, we'll bring in the other departments at the time that, they when they want to come in. But the challenge is we have a lot of legacy bankers that are not used to the new way of doing things, and more importantly, the way to get around these things. The best organizations are now moving toward this, but we even see some of the big banks that haven't moved to a digital account opening process yet. Russ, I'm sure you see this a lot, and this is what are the biggest challenges that you're seeing as organizations want to move forward?
Yeah, we're seeing the same stuff, Jim. I mean, it's pretty unanimous in terms of with our prospects and our customers running into those same kinds of issues. All right, so what's up next, Michael?
Okay, so let's see. There's a quick question here about the demonstration. Was that an actual selfie? In the video, he wasn't speaking.
I wasn't, but it was an actual selfie. I just did this. I did it 2 days ago. I wanted to record it instead of do it live. It works. I did a lot of, I did it, I think, 2 different takes, but it is an actual selfie. So the application actually steps me through. So I clicked on the button and took it took the picture, right, as you saw. I then clicked on capture barcode. It took me to that screen and automatically captured that. And then after it came back as passed, I said, okay, I'm going to take a selfie, and that's actually an integral part of the solution. So, yes, it was a real selfie.
Okay, great. Thank you. And all right, next question. Could you discuss the adoption of this onboarding process with small to moderate sized credit unions? Suggested methods to take the fear out of the members of the digital process.
I look at this fear of the digital process, and I think we overestimate that. And yes, there are going to be demographics that don't want to do this, but I can tell you that I'm certainly not a millennial, and the biggest growth numbers right now as far as digital consumers are those who are older, and certainly those who are wealthy. So they're our most important customers and members. So I think the challenge is it's the way we think customers are acting as opposed to the real way they're acting. I mean, my wife and I, we do all of our Christmas shopping using an app from Amazon called Check Twice. We do all the shopping. Everybody gets a request based on the links that we have to hook onto, and we do all the shopping that way. A lot of consumers are like that. I think we sometimes have in our minds what our consumers say they want. And certainly, if we're taking the poll of people that come into the branches, that's not the people we're thinking about. We're thinking about those 2/3 of the people that came into the branches for the last 10 years that no longer come into the branches. They're the people that have moved to digital already on all their other engagements, but we've made it hard for them to do it on the banking side. Russ, anything else?
Not so much on that one, Jim.
Okay, good.
I mean, nothing to add there.
Okay, I've got, we're just about to top of the hour, but I wanted to, as we said, we've got a lot of questions in, but so I wanted to kind of squeak in one more here at the very top. Okay.
And Michael, before you do that, can I chime in with something? So,
please.
We've been referencing a report and some research here in this webinar today, the digital banking report. And normally that report is $495, but for registrants of this webinar, we're offering them to be able to get it with a discount code for $250. So as part of the follow-up email, we'll send out a link that'll have a URL and the associated discount code so that you can get that report instead of $500, it'll be $250. So go ahead, Michael. Sorry, I just want to make sure we got that in.
No, I'm glad you did. Thank you. All right. Okay, last question. Could the onboarding experience be integrated into the full functionality bank, or is it better to have that experience separate?
Well, I'll start, Jim, and then I know I know you're chomping at the bit. From our perspective, it could be integrated to the full functionality, and it should be integrated to the full functionality, and that things shouldn't be an omni-channel siloed approach as in the past, but one entire complete view and connection with seamless connection across multiple channels in terms of that experience with the customer. So, Jim, anything you wanted to add there?
No, you said it real well. That rather than expand on that, yes, I agree.
And the slides will be sent to everybody too, correct, Michael?
Yep, it's one thing I wanted to remind everyone or let them know, I should say, that we will be sending a follow-up email to everyone that's with us today, and it will have a link to the PDF of the slides and also a recording of this event so that you can review all this great material at your leisure in the future. We encourage you to do that. I also want to thank everyone in the audience for being here, for asking all these great questions. As we mentioned, there were many more than we could get to. We will be following up. Thank you, both Jim and Russ. It's been a great hour of discussion, and all the questions is always a nice sign that what we're talking about is really resonating with the audience. So altogether, a very nice hour that we've had together here. And with that, I will wrap it up. Wish everyone a wonderful rest of the day, and I hope you'll join us again here very soon. Thanks so much.